Valve is easily one of the most recognizable companies in gaming, like no introduction is needed here. As a kid, my favorite game of all time was Left 4 Dead 2, and it's honestly still one of my favorites to this day. In elementary school, I would get out of school a little earlier than my older brother would because he was in middle school. I would get home about 40 minutes to half an hour before he would, and I would use that half an hour every single time to play Left 4 Dead 2 in his bedroom. It's not that he didn't enjoy the game, it's just that I wanted to play it so much all the time that he was fucking sick of it. But ever since then, my love for Valve has been strong, and even if I haven't played all their games, I still respect them for their importance to gaming as a whole. A lot of my favorite games would just not exist without Valve's influence. It's not only because their games are so good that they inspired so many other ones that were also great, but because they also made fucking Steam, and that's where most of those games are posted to. And literally the day that I'm posting this video, Valve's magnum opus Half-Life 2 is turning 20 years old. Can you believe that? Like, seriously. Not only is it crazy that one of the most influential first-person shooters ever made is already 20 years old, it's even crazier that in that time span, I still haven't played it. Oh, I'm sorry, let me get to the point of the video before you fucking... It's not like I was avoiding the games or anything.
Don't let your kids watch it!
I always respected them from a distance. I love these hosts from a distance after all. And it wasn't until this year that Half-Life 2 turned 20 goddamn years old that I finally decided to play these games, and my god. Not only is it one of the greatest first-person shooters ever made, I'm convinced it is the first-person shooter, motherfucker. This is the one. So many games that we love now stem from this one in some way, and that's just so mind-boggling to me. But before we can talk about all of that, we have to talk about the game itself. So I should clarify that there will be some minor plot spoilers, not a whole lot, because I feel like most people already have opinions on this story. They already know how this shit goes. I don't need to tell you what happens in Half-Life if you've played Half-Life, you know? But also, just on the off chance that a lot of people are watching this were like me and haven't played these games before, I want to give you the chance to still play these games and enjoy it yourselves or whatever, while also still being able to somewhat watch this video if you choose to. So every time a spoiler is about to be mentioned or like shown, I'll put on the screen in text like, hey, spoiler coming up. But without any further ado, let's start at the beginning. Video games were created... No, fucking...
Good morning, and welcome to the Black Mesa Transit System. This automated train is provided for the security and convenience of the Black Mesa Research Facility personnel. The time is 8:47 a.m.
I'm sure a lot of you probably know this story already, but for clarity's sake, here we go. In 1996, two Microsoft employees named Gay Newell and Mike Harrington were like, fuck this, we want to make video games instead. So they left Micropenis behind, started a company called Valve, and immediately got to work on the shared creative idea of a little video game called Half-Life. It's a sci-fi first-person shooter action game with strong elements of horror. This game is immediately hit with critical acclaim. Everybody loves Half-Life and the amazing ideas it's presenting. It took aspects of other stories and forms of media and put them in a video game form that we haven't really seen before yet. It was like the Star Wars of video games. This game is closer to being 30 than it is to being 20, which blows my mind because it still plays super well. It feels good, it's smooth and fluent and responsive, and honestly, I really dig the PS1 aesthetic graphics even to this day. I know that they're not like great looking, but there's something about this vibe that's so comforting yet kind of freaky and uncanny at the same time that I really dig it. And like I said, the gameplay is just so fluent, man. It's the perfect mix of cover shooting and running and gunning. It feels quick but also slow when it needs to be, and you feel appropriately powerful for a motherfucker walking around in one of these huge goddamn robotic looking suits all the time. These motherfuckers gotta be heavy, right? Like, that looks uncomfortable. And the combat does get hella tough at points, but this game is usually pretty fair in all honesty, so if you do die, So if you die, it's kind of your own fault. Ah! Dude! I wasn't fucking insulting you, I was just saying. And I know it's dated and all, but I seriously love the look of this like PS1 graphic style. The blocky and almost sharp look of everything is just so familiar and comforting in a way to me, yet uncanny at the same time. These motherfuckers be ugly. And the fleshy and almost slimy look of all the creatures in this game sets a really uncomfortable tone that sticks throughout the whole time. It's just unsettling, especially due to the amazing sound design done by Kelly Bailey, who also made this game's awesome fucking soundtrack. And this game's impact on the indie scene cannot be ignored. To this day, people are using this game's engine for some of the best total conversion mods that I have ever seen. Cry of Fear is an entire multi-hour horror game with a well-written story that was made entirely in Half-Life 1. And did I mention you could download it for free on Steam? So why the fuck haven't you? Come on, like, this game is great. Or was it just all in my head? You also have stuff like Paranoia, a dark mindfuck about a Russian military officer. There's also Absolute Redemption, which is a surprisingly good follow-up to Gordon's story. And this super crazy one called Point of View, where you get to see things from the perspective of the aliens. And don't forget things like Black Mesa, which is technically just like Half-Life 1 created with a lot more of the mechanics that you'd see in the sequel, which is also another game that you can get on Steam. Unlike Cry of Fear though, it is not fucking free, and I don't blame them at all. This shit probably took like 12 dozen dog years to make this good.
But I do know what happens when someone doesn't put the work in.
And it's not even just mods or total conversion, whatever. Just look at things like Cruelty Squad. That game just probably wouldn't exist without the influence of Half-Life. I can't have that, man. I can't have that! One of the reasons it's so easy to slip into the Half-Life glove is because of how simple these games are if you really think about it. There's not a whole lot of learning you have to do to figure out this game's combat. You aim with the mouse and you shoot with the mouse. You walk with WASD. It's really not that complicated to figure out at all. And I kind of feel like that makes it more inviting in a strong way, because it's not like people have to learn a bunch of crazy mechanics before they ever have fun with the game. They just buy it and then immediately get to enjoy it. The only thing that might annoy some new players is that you can't aim down the sights on your weapons, which, side note, modern games have made people expect that shit way too much.
Back in my day, we didn't have that shit. We just looked to where it told us to look. Back in my day, you had to fucking stand still to shoot half the goddamn time.
But once you do learn the mechanics of this game, it really just becomes a matter of experimenting. It's not like Half-Life is as free as in the sense of Dishonored or some shit. It is a very linear game in the way that it's set up, but it's so unrestrictive about how you do things. It could give less of a fuck if you decide to run past everybody. That's what you chose to do, so do it. This game's story is genuinely one for the ages. It's simple, but it's so effective and interesting immediately. Characters are so well written and memorable. Like, Gordon Freeman doesn't even fucking say anything, and I still feel an attachment to this guy. And I'm not usually that big into, like, dystopian sci-fi. Like, when people say dystopian future, I think of that one Logan Paul movie, and I don't want to think of that Logan Paul movie. This one really clicked for me for some reason, though, because I think it kind of draws inspiration from a bunch of other stuff that I like. But the main appeal is, like, the monsters and this almost sci-fi scary element that it has that I really dig. Like, there's just something kind of aesthetically pleasing about, like, bright white tube fucking looking labs that are filled with blood and decay of things that happened before. Like walking around Dead Space and being like, what the fuck happened here? That's the feeling that I really enjoy out of these types of games. Which, by the way, is EA actually gonna cancel that Dead Space 2 remake? You know, like, everybody liked the first one, right? You also know that Dead Space 2 is genuinely considered to be one of the best survival horror games ever, right?
So why the fuck would you not remake it and make all that money?
Speaking of which, why does EA just hate Dead Space? I don't know if y'all know this or not, but John Carpenter has expressed interest in directing a Dead Space movie. John Carpenter, the dude who made The Thing, which inspired Dead Space in a lot of ways, wants to make a Dead Space movie, and they're not letting him. that keeps me up at night, you know, it fucks with me. But alas, of course this game is not perfect. It does get repetitive sometimes, and I feel like it does start to drag a little bit in the third act. And don't even get me started on that one goddamn level where you're jumping over the fucking acid pit or whatever. Oh my god, that shit sucked. But overall, I'd say this game's good qualities much outweigh the negatives, which is insane to think, considering, like I said, this game is almost 30 fucking years old. It's crazy that something this old is still so well made to this day that hundreds of people are like, fuck it, I'm gonna use this shit to make my own video game. This game is just a fucking masterpiece. And then the sequel came out. Half-Life 2 might just be the video game of all time. Like, this is it, guys. This is, fucking pack it up. This is the video game. Fuck Halo, fuck Max Payne, fuck Roblox airsoft shooter. This is the real shooter. This is the one that matters. Much like the first Half-Life, before I played this, I didn't realize how many games I loved were directly from this game, essentially. The first BioShock is legitimately one of my favorite games ever made, and that shit is just Half-Life 2 but underwater. First Half-Life was extremely influential and huge for first-person shooters, so to make a sequel to that, the pressure must have been really fucking high. And things are also starting to heat up, considering in the almost 8 years between these two games, a new challenger emerged onto the scene. This one took it in a slightly different direction and focused more on console gameplay than computer-based. Halo's main goal was to make the most smooth and reliable first-person shooting mechanics they could for a controller, essentially. And god damn it did they pull that off. Not only that, this game was also considered to be a fucking masterpiece, much like the first Half-Life. And in the year 2004, which is a great year, I'm totally not biased at all, both Half-Life 2 and Halo 2 were set to release. But not just that, they were set to come out only like a week apart from each other. Two of the biggest sequels to two of the biggest first-person shooters of all time were literally neck and neck with each other. I can't imagine the debates that people probably had in like the high school fucking locker room about these games when they came out. No, don't care. Half-Life 2 is better. It's so much fucking better. It's better. I still to this day see some people debating which of these games is actually better, but I don't know if it's really as simple as all that. While I might personally prefer Half-Life 2, I would not get mad or judge somebody else for thinking that Halo 2 is better, because both of these games managed to achieve exactly what they set out to do, and both of them to this day are some of the best shooters that you can play. In a weird way, when these games both came out, it feels like they shook each other's hands and said, alright, fuck it, we're both just gonna make a bunch of money, who cares? And not only was Half-Life 2 a major success, people also consider it to be a lot better than the first one for a strong reason. Because not only was this game's goal to make the good shit from the first game even better, they also set out to add new and exciting mechanics to this already strong mix. The first several hours of the game are spent with this weird car thing, and I loved every second of it. You get to drive this fast, turbo boosting, shooting motherfucker around, do a bunch of cool puzzles, and fight a bunch of cool enemies. It's an immediate switch up from the narrow hallways and compact air vents of the first game. You're just thrown out into this semi-open looking area to just fucking take in all this scenery. And honestly, even though this game is 20 years old, I still think it looks really cool. And it's not just that either. You see a variety of locations in this place. Like when you go to that fucking creepy ass abandoned town filled with nothing but those scary ass zombies, which I'm sure you've seen all the TikToks and YouTube shorts about how those guys aren't just moaning at you, they're technically speaking. Like details like that just kind of fuck with my brain, because you didn't need to make it that scary and vulgar, but you did, and I respect it.
God, help me!
Not to mention some of the characters you meet in this place, like this man here. Like, this guy's face has been in my entire childhood, and it was nice to finally meet the motherfucker behind it. And guess what? He's crazy, As crazy as I'd hope he'd be, honestly. Back to the zombies though, I genuinely love this design so much. These fucking alien face hugger inspired head crab things, that's a freaky premise. That just freaks me out. A tiny little thing that scurries around and can climb on shit and just latches onto your head and you can't get that motherfucker off. Ugh. Not to mention it morphs these people into some grotesque looking beasts, like those little runny guys that are just fucking flesh essentially and bone. Ew. Everything about that. Ew. But it's not just them either. The human enemies can also be a genuine threat when they gang up on you or they actually land a shot. But luckily a lot of these Combine soldiers have the aim of a fucking stormtrooper. But goddamn, even if they're kind of dumb sometimes, it will never not be fun to kill these dudes and watch their bodies ragdoll in ridiculous ways. I can't think of an interesting way to transition to the fact that I want to talk about this game's villains real quick.
Rise and shine, Mr. Freeman. Rise and shine. I realize this moment may not be the most convenient for a heart-to-heart.
The G-Man is genuinely one of the most uncomfortable motherfuckers of all time, but it's so interesting to listen to him speak. He's like an enigma, a living riddle. And Wallace Breen is genuinely one of the biggest pieces of shit of all time. Every time I saw this dude's face stamped across the city, it immediately gave me flashbacks to BioShock. And it's always really nice to know the inspiration behind some of your favorite things. I just love this game's characters as a whole, to be honest, and growing up on YouTube and seeing these motherfuckers in so many Gmod things just gives me some extra layer of weird attachment to them for some reason. I got more attached to Gordon somehow, even though he still don't feel like speaking at all. They also take random characters like Barney from the first game and expand on him. Yeah, that's right, they decided to kill all of his clones that you met in the original game and dwindle down to one guy and pump him full of a little bit of personality. But I'm not gonna lie, the first time he showed up, I had no fucking clue who this was. Like, who are you, dude? And this is the first time I've seen your face. And in a weird way, I also have an extra layer of attachment to this game's characters because of all of the fucking animations I saw as a kid on YouTube. That's another cool thing born out of this. I cannot believe for a fucking second that Gmod was just made because some guy was messing around with the Half-Life engine. That is so cool. Think about all the shit that was born out of that, dude. And so you had a bunch of dumb YouTube poop animations, but you also had really cool classics like Elliot Goes to School. I was devastated when its creator Colin Wickoff passed away in 2015. The dude's work was silly, but it genuinely resonated me as a kid. Like, I still have a very strong soft spot for stuff like Elliot Goes to School to this day. The fact that Half-Life 2 led to something like Gmod being made, which gave a bunch of creative, cool people like Colin the tools to make stuff like Elliot Goes to School, just blows my mind. Isn't it just kind of cool how things work out like that sometimes, man? Isn't Half-Life 2 just so fucking cool? Like, come on. What isn't to love about this kind of shit?